Be informed. Be guided. Be inspired. As Hector Macalalag Leadership Channel proudly presents review sessions for Principal Swain and DMT.
Isang mapagpalang araw sa inyong lahat. A blessed day to all of you. Welcome to the National Qualifying Examination for School Heads Review, or otherwise known as the Principal's Test Review. Ang pag-uusapan po natin sa video na ito ay tungkol sa Sustainable Development Goals. Yung ibang mga clippings na nandito ay na-recognize ko na galing sa United Nations na website. Kailangan nating malaman ang Sustainable Development Goals ng sangkalibutan kasi doon nakaangkla lahat ng mga programa ng bawat bansa. Ito po ang inyong lingkod. Nagsasabing dapat lahat ng kaalaman na pwede nating makuha ay dapat nating kunin in order for you to prepare for the incoming Principal's Test. Consider the Principal's Test as a great, or the delay in this Principal's Test as a great blessing because you have more time to review and to reflect what are those things that you need to know. Let us start with this. There are 17 sustainable development goals. Noon ito'y tinatawag na Millennium Development Goals. Magsisimula dito sa no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduce inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions. The last one is partnerships for the goals. Ito po lahat ang Sustainable Development Goals. Magsisimula tayo sa number 1, no poverty. So, ang sabi ng goal na ito, end extreme poverty in all forms by 2030. Yes, it's an ambitious goal, but we believe it can be done. So, paano nga ba ma-achieve ang no poverty na, no? It's talagang ambitious goal siya. But take note of this. In year 2000, the world committed to having the number of people living in extreme poverty by the year 2015. So, between 2000 to 2015, kalahati po ang nabawas na mga tao na nag-experience ng extreme poverty. Pag sinabing extreme, talagang nasa dulo na lang yung paghihirap. And we will meet this goal. However, more than 800 million people around the world still live on less than $1.25 a day. That's about the equivalent of the entire population of Europe living in extreme poverty. Now, it's time to build on what we learned and end poverty altogether. So, ito po yung Sustainable Development Goal number 1, no poverty or end extreme poverty. So, inamin na niya na ambitious, but it can be done based on trend. So, kasi sinabi niya, from year 2000 to 2015, kalahati po yung nabawas. Pangalawa ay zero hunger. End hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. So ito po ang pamamaraan para mag-zero ang hunger. In the past 20 years, hunger has dropped by almost half. So imagine, for the past 20 years, kalahati po ang natapyas doon sa mga nagugutom. Many countries that used to suffer from famine and hunger can now meet the nutritional needs of their most vulnerable people. It's an incredible accomplishment. Now we can go further and end hunger and malnutrition once and for all. That means doing things such as promoting sustainable agriculture and supporting small farmers. It's a tall order. Mahirap nga naman. Kasi how do you promote sustainable agriculture and support small farmers? Dito nga sa atin, marami na yung mga farms nakakonvert sa mga subdivisions. Kasi according to them, nalulugi daw yung mga farmers. But for the sake of nearly 1 out of 9 people on earth who go to bed hungry every night, can you imagine that one? We've got to try this one. Because if we have no goal, we have no chance of being successful. So, kailangan talaga mayroon tayong goal as a world, no? Imagine a world where everyone has access to sufficient and nutritious food all the year round. Together, we can make that reality by 2030. So, ganyan po kaimportante itong goal na ito. Pangatlo ay good health and well-being. Ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all ages. So, ito yung sabi ng goal number 3. We all know how important it is to be in good health. Of course, health is wealth. Our health affects everything from how much we enjoy life to what work we can perform. That's why there's a goal to make sure everyone has health coverage and access to safe and effective medicines and vaccines. So dapat equal opportunity to everyone. In the past 25 years, before the Sustainable Development Goals, we made a big strides. Preventable child's death dropped by more than half. And maternal mortality went down almost as much. And yet, some other countries remain tragically high, like the fact that 6 million children die every year before their 5th birthday. Can you imagine? Or that AIDS is the leading cause of death of adolescents in sub-Saharan Africa. Adolescents pa lang yan, ha? We have the means to turn that around and make good health more than just a wish. So it should be a habit. And pinaka-importante, isa sa mga sinabi ay comprehensive health coverage and access to effective medicines and vaccines. So dapat equal opportunity to everyone, whether you are rich or poor. The fourth one is quality education. Ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. First, the bad news on education, poverty, armed conflict, and other emergencies keep many kids around the world out of school. So kaya hindi naman natin kontrolado yan, di ba? Yung poverty, armed conflict, and other emergencies. Kaya na daw marami ang out of school children. In fact, kids from the poorest households are 4 times more likely to be out of school than those of the richest households. Now, for some good news, since 2000, there had been enormous progress on the goal to provide primary education to all children worldwide. The total enrollment rate in developing regions has reached 91%. By measures in any school, that's a good grade. Now, let us get an even better grade for all kids, and achieve the goal of universal primary and secondary education, affordable vocational training, access to higher education, and more. So dapat yung education should be inclusive, equitable, and should promote lifelong learning opportunities for everyone, regardless of who you are, whether you are poor or rich. The number five is gender equality. We have to achieve gender equalities and empower all women and girls. We can celebrate the great progress the world has made in becoming more prosperous and fair. But there's a shadow to the celebration. In just about every way, women and girls lag behind. Pero mukhang hindi natututo ngayon. Marami na pong mga babae ang empower at talagang namumuno, no? There are still gross inequalities in works and wages, maybe in some other countries. Lots of unpaid women's work, such as childcare and domestic work, and discrimination in public decision making. But there are grounds for hope. More girls are in school now. This is true in our country compared to 2000, year 2000. Most regions have reached gender parity in primary education, and percentage of women getting paid for their work is on the rise. The Sustainable Development Goals aims to build on these achievements to ensure that there is an end to discrimination against women and girls everywhere. Goal number 6, clean water and sanitation. Ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. So everyone on earth should have access to safe and affordable drinking water. That's the goal for 2030. While many people take clean drinking water and sanitation for granted, many others don't. Water scarcity affects more than 40% of people around the world. Can you imagine? 40% pa lang affected ng water scarcity around the world. And that number is projected to go even higher as a result of climate change. Yes, climate change is really striking. If we continue the path we've on, by 2050, at least 1 in 4 people are likely to be affected by recurring water shortages. But we can take a new path, more international cooperation, protecting wetlands and rivers, sharing water treatment technology or technologies that lead to accomplishing these goals. So ito po yung mga pamamaraan para ma-protect at ma-promote yung clean and water sanitation for everyone. The seventh one is affordable and clean energy. Ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. Between 1990 and year 2000, the number of people with access to electricity increased by 1.7 billion. Oh, of course, this is really true, no? It can be observed. Kasi mga early 90s, marami pa ang walang electricity. But by and by, marami din ang nagkakaroon. That's a progress to be proud of course. That's a great achievement. And yet, as the world's populations continue to rise, still more people will need cheap energy to light their homes and streets, use phones and computers, and to do their everyday businesses. So, kailangan pa rin kasi kahit na-address mo naman, marami ka ng achievement, ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all, yung population naman po natin is increasing every year. So, there should be a constant improvement or continuous improvement in dealing this. So, kahit na-address mo na ang previous needs, every day the needs is getting higher. How we can get that energy is an issue. Fossil fuels and greenhouse gas emissions are making drastic changes in the climate. Yes, kasi ito yung ginagamit natin, yung mga fossil fuels and greenhouse gas emissions. So, there is a connection of this to climate change. Because of using all of this, there is climate change. And because of climate change, there are more calamities and shortages of other resources, leading to big problems on every continent. That is really true. Climate change leads to big problems on every continent. Instead, we can become more energy efficient and invest in clean energy sources such as solar or wind. So, yung wind talagang marami na siya, no? Lalo sa mga mahahangin na lugar. Just like I think in Ilocos, no? May windmill sila doon as a source of energy. Then solar nowadays is becoming popular. More and more household are nagpapakabit na ng solar panel. So in order to conserve energy. So in that way, we can help the environment. That way, we'll meet electricity needs and protect the environment. How's that for a balancing act? At nakalimutang i-mention na yung water or hydro source of energy is still one of the best source of energy. Lalo na sa lugar natin sa Mindanao. Meron tayong Maria Cristina Falls. So, that is a source of energy to all of us. 8 is decent work and economic growth. Promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. An important part of economic growth is that people have jobs that pay enough to support themselves and their families. Of course, ito naman talaga ang kinakailangan. Pero ngayon, dahil sa pandemic, marami po tayo sa private sector na wala ng mga trabaho. Pero sa government sector, continuous pa naman yung sweldo natin by God's grace. The good news is that the middle class is growing worldwide, almost tripling in size in developing countries in the last 25 years to more than a third of the population. But today, job growth is not keeping pace with the growing labor force. Kasi dumadami yung mga tao. Pero yung mga job opening, hindi naman gaanong dumadami. So, yun yung imbalance. So, things don't have to be that way. We can promote policies that encourage entrepreneurship and job creation. We can eradicate forced labor, slavery, and human trafficking. So, pwedeng-pwede po alisin niyang mga yan, yung forced labor. Yung iba kahit baba lang po ang salary, there's an abuse, no? And then of course, human trafficking. Kahit yung mga bata, ginagawang mga workers, permanent workers at a very low pay or payment. And in the end, we can achieve the goal of decent work for all women and men by 2030. So ito yung goal natin by 2030 na ma-promote promote, sustain, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for everyone. So take note of the keyword, decent work for all. So sana ma-achieve yan by 2030. The ninth one is industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Importante din ito. So sa panahon ni President Duterte ngayon, mayroon siyang natawag na Build, Build, Build project. So, build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. So ito po yung ano niya, no? So technological progress help us address big global challenges such as creating jobs and becoming more energy efficient. So yung mga pag-progress natin technologically will really help us so that we can cope up with global challenges. For example, the world is becoming ever more interconnected and prosperous. That is really, really true. Thanks to the internet. Yes, Because of internet, we can be at different places at the same time, and we can research anything we want. The more connected we are, the more we can all benefit from the wisdom and contributions of people everywhere on earth. And yet, 4 billion people have no way of getting online. Can you imagine that one? Akala natin lahat na connected, pero sabi dito, 4 billion people have no way of getting online. The vast majority of them in developing countries, of course. Yung mga highly industrialized countries, parang kaunti na lang ang problema. Hindi naman perfect, no? Pero sa developing countries or third world countries, there's really a vast majority of challenge because there are more people are not connected on internet and other forms of technology. The more we invest in innovation and infrastructure, the better off we will be, bridging the digital divide and promoting sustainable industries and investing in scientific research and innovation are all important ways to facilitate sustainable development. Take note of the keyword scientific research and innovation. So, it should be based on data and it should be, or innovation should be the name of the game. It is said that in today's century, innovation is the name of the game. Look at Nokia. Diba sila yung nagpauso ng mga cellphones, yung mga analog cellphones, 3210, 5110i, 3310. Sila yon nagsimula. Pero, they failed to innovate. Nag-innovate man sila, pero huli na, may mga nakauna na sa kanila. Dahil yung Android phone hindi nila masyadong na-foreseen yun. Look at Kodak also. Before the existing nag-exist itong mga Android phone na may camera, yung walang mga film na camera. Sila yung nangunguna. In fact, yung Kodak ay way of life na siya ng mga Pilipino. Pag sinabing magpa-picture o magpa-Kodak tayo, pero brand siya ng camera or film. But look at them now. Kung saan na sila kasi hindi sila nag-innovate. So, importante talaga ang scientific research and innovation for every nation so that they can advance and they can facilitate sustainable development in their country. And by doing that, there is really inclusive and sustainable industrialization and foster innovation in a certain country. Ang tawag nila ngayon ay Fourth Industrial Revolution. So, dapat ito yung i-cope up natin ng bawat bansa, yung Fourth Industrial Revolution. So, that's it. That's the term. The third one, or the 10th one is reduce inequalities. Reduce inequality within and among our countries. Mahirap din ito. Madali lang itong sabihin ang reduce inequality within and among countries. Pero hindi talaga maiwasan that it is existing and that is happening all over the world. Kasi nga naman, yung mayayaman, lalong mayaman. Yung mahihirap, lalong humihirap. Kasi nga, yung mahirap naman, their opportunities are limited. Maybe because of their level of education or their will to progress. At yung mayayaman, kung sino pa yung mayayaman, syempre, they are the ones who are determined to succeed. So, but that's case-to-case basis. Okay. It's an old story. Yes, that's true. It's an old story. Matagal-tagal na ito. O, ito yung sinabi ko kanina, di ba? The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Yun talaga. Kasi yung mindset ng iba talaga, lalo na pag mahihirap, parang maraming mga practices that needs to be discontinued. Kasi hindi marunong mag-save, and many more factors, no? Where the rich talagang controlled yung money nila. Ang paggasta, spending, planado lahat. The divide has never been starker. We can and must adopt policies that create opportunity for everyone, regardless of who they are, where they come from. So, dapat may mga policies and opportunities ang isang estado for everyone, regardless of who you are at kung saan ka galing. By doing that, there is equality. Income inequality is a global problem that requires global solutions. That means improving the regulation of financial markets and institutions, sending development aid where it is needed, and helping people migrate safely so they can pursue opportunities. Yung iba kasi na-stuck sa isang lugar, na mayroon namang mas lugar na pwede silang mag-grow and mag-pursue ng opportunities doon. Parang wrong yung mga decision sa buhay. Kaya kailangan yung state mismo ang magbibigay ng policies, right policies, so that they can facilitate this inequality. Together, we can now change the direction of the old story of inequality. Kaya nga sabi natin, di ba, that is an old story already. So that's why there is a need for the nation to produce policies that will create opportunities for everyone. The number 11 is sustainable cities and communities. We must make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. This is easier said than done. How do you make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, and resilient and sustainable? How do we do it? That's the big question. Of course, there are a lot of ways to do it. So, tayong mga educators, dapat alam natin ito kasi most of the directions of every country is anchored on this. Thus, there is a need for us to know all of this. If you're like most people, you live in a city, so ito no, example ito. More than half the world's population now lives in cities. Imagine, no? More than half of the population lives in cities. And that figure will go to about two-thirds by humanity by the year 2050. Imagine, two-thirds na. That means 66%. So by 2050, cities are getting bigger. In 1990, there were 10 megacities with 10 million inhabitants or more. Can you imagine? A megacity, they are occupied by 10 million people or more. In 2014, there were 28 megacities, home to 453 million people. Incredible, huh? A lot of people love cities. They are centers of culture and businesses and life, of course. Kasi maano sila, ma-entice sila sa city kasi masaya. Maraming mga tindahan, maraming mga buildings, and there are a lot of opportunities. The thing is, they are also often centers of extreme poverty. That is correct. Absolutely correct. Maraming mahihirap na nandyan sa mga cities. Kasi kahit maraming opportunities, ang standard of living ay mataas and overpopulated na. Ang mga resources dyan, kakaunti na lang, like the natural resources. To make cities sustainable for all, we can create good, affordable public housing. We can upgrade slum settlements. Yung nasa slum talaga, kawawa. Yung iba nga sa kanal lang at yung iba hindi maisura yung mga kinalalagyan nila. We can invest in public transport, create green spaces, and get a broader range of people involved in urban planning decisions. Of course, this is beyond our control as educator, pero dapat alam natin kung anong direction dapat na ating government kasi ito yung direction ng sustainable development goal ng buong mundo. Buong mundo ito. So dapat alam natin. Kasi malapit na rin ang eleksyon, we can choose wisely kung sino yung iboboto natin. And that way, we can keep the things we love about cities and change the things we don't. That's true. Number 12 is responsible consumption and production. Ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. So ito talaga, dapat responsible yung consumption at responsible din yung production natin. So that should be balance. Mayroong consumption and production. So the pattern should conform with what is expected to do and standards. So, some people use a lot of stuff and some people use very little. In fact, a big share of the world population is consuming too little meat, even their basic needs. And that is really, really true. Instead, we can have a world where everybody gets what they need to survive and thrive. We can consume in a way that preserves our natural resources so that our children can enjoy them. Kasi yung consumption and production, ano naman, nasa-sacrifice naman yung nature and natural resources natin. Lumiliit, nadi-destroy, Okay nga yung production, okay nga yung consumption, na ano naman natin yung natural resources natin. So, paano pa ang mai-enjoy ng mga bata pagdating ng panahon? And their children and their children's children after that. And the hard part is how to achieve that goal. We can manage our natural resources more efficiently and dispose of toxic waste better. Cut per capita food waste in half globally. Get businesses and consumers to reduce and recycle waste. And help countries that have typically not consumed a lot to move towards responsible consumption patterns. Marami sa atin, isang example, pwede natin gawin. We use yung mga lalagyan natin ng tubig, magdala na lang tayo ng mga lalagyan ng tubig, yung tumbler na tinatawag, instead of buying mineral waters. Kasi yung mga plastic na yan, it will take million of years bago siya mag-disappear. So nakakasira talaga siya pag tinapon saan-saan, pag hindi natin sila ni-recycle, pag hindi natin sila binigyan ng pansin, kung saan-saan lang tinatapon, so nasa-sacrifice yung ating natural resources. So, within us, we can control. Like, may DepEd order tayo na bawal na ang paggamit ng mga plastics at pagsusunod ng plastics. So, dapat we should be the example. So, marami ng mga moves ang government in order to address this kind of sustainable development goals. I hope that each of us, mano na tayo, magising na tayo. The world is not getting cleaner. It is deteriorating. If we will not help in cleaning this Mother Nature and our natural resources, we will eventually suffer because of the presence of the different calamities. So, dapat, kailangan natin siyang pangalagaan. And the consumption and production should not destroy the natural resources. Kaya, it should be balanced. You have to reduce and recycle waste. Tandaan, reduce and recycle. In our own little way, we can help Mother Earth. So that's one of the Sustainable Development Goals. The 13th one, malapit na po tayo sa 17, ay yung tinatawag na climate action. Of course, ito yung climate change. So, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. So, how do we combat climate change and its impact? Yan ang malaking tanong. So, sa ating lahat. So, paano nga ba natin siya mapapangalagaan ang ating climate? So, para hindi siya magkakaroon ng climate change. Kasi eventually, this climate change will affect us. You will have lot of calamity. So, there must be a climate action. Every country in the world is seeing the drastic effects of climate change, some more than others. Yes. Yung nangyari recently sa China, biglang bumaha. Marami ang namatay, marami ang apektuhan. So, yung iba, baka hindi pa nila na-feel. Pero yung iba talagang na-feel na. No? Yung iba, sobrang init, sobrang ulan, kahit hindi naman nila season mag-ulan. On average, the annual losses just from earthquakes, tsunamis, tropical cyclones, and flooding count in hundreds of billions of dollars. Yes! Kasi instead na gastusin dyan, we could have used that money for some improvement in our countries. But the calamity fund is being used for that purpose. We can reduce the loss of life and property by helping more vulnerable regions such as landlocked countries and island states become more resilient. It is still possible with the political will and technological measures to limit the increase in global mean temperature to 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels and thus avoid the worst effects of climate change. The Sustainable Development Goals lay out a way for countries to work together to meet this urgent challenge. Take note of the word urgent. This is urgent. Hindi na pwedeng patagalin. Hindi na pwedeng bukas na. But ngayon na mismo. Number 14 is life below water. Of course, this is very, very important. To conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. So, kailangan pamalagaan ang life below water. The oceans make human life possible. Kasi marami tayong pagkain dyan, di ba? Their temperature, their chemistry, their currents, their life forms. For one thing, more than 3 billion people depend on marine and coastal diversity for their livelihoods. That is correct. Imagine that 3 billion people, if we will not take care of oceans, seas, and marine resources, ilang bilyon ang nakadepende sa kanila? 3 billion people. Their livelihood is dependent on that. So, but today, we are seeing nearly a third of the world's fish stocks overexploited. Overexploited na. That's not a sustainable way of life. Even people who live nowhere near the ocean can't live without it. Kaya nga, diba? Oceans absorb about 30% of the carbon dioxide that humans produce. But we're producing more carbon dioxide than ever before. And that makes the oceans more acidic. 20% more. So ilan na lang yung kayang mag-survive dyan? Kasi marami tayong sobra ng polluted. Since the start of the Industrial Revolution, our trash doesn't help either. 13,000 pieces of plastics litter on every square meter of square kilometer of ocean. Can you imagine? For every square kilometer, there are 13,000 of plastics na nandun. Sounds bad, but right? Don't despair. The Sustainable Development Goals indicate targets for managing and protecting life below water. Number 15. Life on land. Of course, importante din ito. Protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. So, dapat pangalagaan ang life on land. Humans and other animals rely on other forms of life on land for food, clean air, clean water, and as a means of combating climate change. Plant life makes up 80% of the human diet. Forests, which cover 30% of the Earth's surface, help keep the air and water clean and the Earth's climate in balance. That's not to mention they are home to millions of animal species, but the land and life on it are in trouble. Arable land is disappearing 30 to 35 times faster than it has historically. Deserts are spreading. So, hindi na talaga maganda, no? Animal breeds are going extinct. Can you imagine that one? We can turn these trends around. Fortunately, the Sustainable Development Goals aims to conserve and restore the use of terrestrial ecosystems such as forests, wetlands and drylands, and mountains by 2030. Ano yung keyword? Conserve and restore. So, kailangan siya ma-conserve at ma-restore. So, dapat ito yung isa sa mga tatandaan natin. The 16th one is peace, justice, and strong institutions. Promote peaceful and inclusive societies for just sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. Isa din to sa mga factor na makapa-affect sa maraming sustainable development goals. How can a country develop? How can a people eat and teach and learn and work and raise families? Without peace, of course, it will be very, very difficult. Without peace, everything is affected. And how can a country have peace without justice, without human rights, without government based on the rule of law? So dapat talaga sa mga leaders natin, isipin to mga ito. Some parts of the world enjoy relative peace and justice, and may come to take it for granted. Other parts seem to be plagued by armed conflict, crime, torture, and exploitation, all of which are hinders their development. Of course, when there is no peace, there is no development. The goal of peace and justice is one for all the countries to strive forwards. The Sustainable Development Goals aim is to reduce all forms of violence and propose that governments and communities find lasting solutions to conflict and insecurity. That means strengthening the rule of law, reducing the flow of illicit arms, and bringing developing countries more into the center of an institution and global governance. So, di ba? Importante talaga na mayroong peaceful and inclusive society and provide justice for all in order to build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. And the last uh, Sustainable Development Goal is partnerships for the goals. Strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. So, ang ibig sabihin nito, the Sustainable Development Goals are pretty big to-do list. Don't you think? In fact, it's so big, you may just want to throw your hands up in the air. Forget it. Can't be done. Why even try? But we've got lot of going for us. The world is more interconnected today than ever before. Thanks to the internet, travel, and global institutions. There's a growing consensus about the need to work together to stop climate change, and the Sustainable Development Goals are no small matter either. 193 countries agreed on these goals. Pretty incredible, isn't it? 193 countries agreeing on anything, and final goal lays out a way for nations to work together to achieve all other goals. So there should be an interconnectivity of all nations. They need to work together. They need to have partnership in order to succeed on these Millennium Development Goals. So bilang mga educators, dapat alam natin itong 17 Sustainable Development Goals as one of our bases in all our actions in our country, in our division, and even in our school. I hope that you learned something from my presentation. This will really help you. Kasi kung paminsan-minsan may mga lumalabas na mga tanong na ganito sa principal's test. And you can even study about Philippines Qualifications Framework and ASEAN Qualifications Framework. Maybe that will be my next topic. Thank you very much for listening and have a blessed day to all of you.